And hello to you. Recently, I heard from my friend Amina. She had just discovered this podcast and thought she'd give it a listen. She started in on Darcy Bustle. I mean, you would. But then decided to listen to Why Dance Matters from the very beginning. She had a lot of chores to get through. What this meant was that throughout the day, I kept getting lovely little messages from Amina about our amazing guests. The wonderful Xander Parrish from our very first episode, film director Gurinder Chadha, choreographer Akram Khan. It brought back a raft of memories of remarkable people sharing their thoughts and stories with incredible generosity. Listener, my heart was full. And now, here we are beginning season 9 of Why Dance Matters, the Royal Academy of Dance podcast. And in keeping with warm and inspiring feelings, we have a uniquely inspirational guest, the one and only Misty Copeland, principal dancer at American Ballet Theatre, a trailblazer for black dancers, for ballet as an art that speaks to the heart and can communicate its joys to young people. She's still on maternity leave from American Ballet Theatre, but her foundation has started a dance programme for young people called Be Bold. Now that's a message for life. Misty will surely make a special first guest for our new season. I'm David Jays. This is Why Dance Matters. Let's make some memories. Misty, welcome to Why Dance Matters. Now, you are a writer, you're an activist, you're an entrepreneur, you're a role model, you're even a Barbie. And I'm sure we'll talk about many of those things. But is dancer still the headline description for you? Is that how you think of yourself?
Well, first of all, I'm so excited to be here. I would say yes, that dancer is, at the top in terms of I wouldn't be in this position. I wouldn't be the person that I am, and I wouldn't have the opportunities that dance has afforded me if I weren't a dancer. And so I think that's still, a big part of my identity and who I am, plays into everything that I do. It's with this kind of common mission and goal, which is to bring dance and ballet to more people and to really have that conversation of the lack of diversity in ballet.
And part of that is the work that you're doing with your foundation, which is all about opening up opportunities to children from primarily under-resourced communities, offering them dance, the ability to participate in the arts, and thinking exactly about that diversity and inclusivity. I love the sound of your lead programme in the foundation, Be Bold. Why was boldness such a key word for you?
It's so interesting. I was actually watching this incredible collaboration event that I'm sure you're aware of that took place between Dance Theatre of Harlem and the Royal Ballet Company and the Royal Ballet School, Jacob's Pillow, and in London. And I've been so influenced and inspired by the work that Mr. Mitchell did with the Dance Theatre of Harlem and creating opportunity. And I think to be able to be at the forefront of really making an impactful change in the ballet community, giving more access and opportunity to Black and Brown dancers, that's what he was doing. He was going to London and finding Black dancers and giving them opportunities to come to America and dance for DTH when no one else was giving them performance opportunities in a classical space. So he's definitely been an inspiration for me in shaping my foundation, the Misty Copeland Foundation, and with creating the Be Bold program. To answer your question, I think that it takes being bold, number one, to step into an atmosphere where you're so exposed and vulnerable, which everyone can relate to, I think, who's experienced being in a ballet class and being a part of the community. And even more so, I think, when you come from communities and neighborhoods and backgrounds where you're not supposed to be a part of that world. So Be Bold stands for Ballet Explorations. Ballet offers leadership development. So to me, this is an opportunity for children in an after-school setting to be given an opportunity to take a free ballet class. But to me, it's bigger than ballet. It's giving them the tools to have the confidence to be a part of something bigger than themselves, to be a part of a community, to know what it is to sacrifice and to be a part of a discipline, but to have fun while doing it. And I think that's often lost in ballet. And I was very fortunate that in my upbringing and in the small ballet school I trained in, that was such a big part of it. Yes, it was rigorous, but it was joyful. There wasn't kind of this negative atmosphere that often can be a part of the ballet world. And so I'm trying to create a positive experience for these young people to experience ballet in a way that they feel they're accepted and they can see themselves.
And was that joyfulness that you describe as part of your ballet classes something that sustained you as you pursued it as a career? Because it is joy, something that can be corrected out of you, taught out of you in ballet, because it's such a rigorous discipline, as you say. Holding on to that isn't always easy. How did you manage to do that?
Yeah, no one's ever really pointed that out before. It's true. Had I had maybe a typical or common experience of going into an elite ballet academy, that maybe I would have had a different experience, especially as a Black girl. But I was in an atmosphere where my teacher saw my ability and my talent and nurtured it and made sure that I was almost protected in this environment where there was, of course, negativity happening around me. There was racism happening around me, which I would learn about as an adult, having these conversations with my teacher, kind of looking back. But I think because I had just, again, such a positive experience, as you said, it became something more to me. This wasn't an extracurricular activity. This was something I needed, especially because of the circumstances I grew up in, where there was no stability. We often didn't have a home or food on the table. And I was craving structure, and ballet completely fulfilled that need. It's almost the opposite, I think, of what a lot of people experience in ballet. You come into class and you're like tight and rigid and you're like, oh my gosh, what are they going to expect of me today? Just this pursuit of perfection. And the opposite happened to me. I felt like in my life, I was tense in that way, not knowing what to expect from day to day. And I came into the ballet studio and everything released. And I felt I could be creative. I could be myself. I felt confident. I felt beautiful for the first time. I felt like this was something that was my own. I didn't have to share with my 5 siblings like I did everything else. So I had this just beautiful experience where I think it was the first time in my young life that I felt safe. So being in a studio or being on the stage, even to this day, I feel the most at home in those spaces. And I've carried that on with me, where no matter what chaos is going on in my life, even if negativity that's happened in my professional life, I get on stage and it all goes away. I can't see anyone in the audience. All of those ballet mistresses or masters or the critics, no one can touch me when I'm up there. I can do exactly what I need to do and what I feel is right in the moment.
And when you're on stage, you have to be bold, actually, because it is all down to you at that point. And I'm wondering, is it easy to do that, especially if you're dancing one of the classics where there are all these ghosts of former dancers kind of clustering around, performances you might have seen on stage or on film, voices telling you how a role should be produced. When you're dancing it, is it easy to shut all of that noise out?
Definitely when I'm on the stage. Through the rehearsal process, it's very difficult. I mean, that's so ingrained in the culture of ballet that we're passing on these experiences and these interpretations from one dancer to the next, trying to emulate what the original cast did. And to me, it's so unrealistic. And I think I've always had an understanding of that. And I think that's because I looked different from the people around me. And so I always knew, like, this isn't going to look exactly like that person, but I can bring myself to it. I can only do my best. And so I feel like that's always been my mindset. Of course, I've had those difficult experiences where, the expectation is so high. I'm referring to one in particular. It was probably the only experience in my almost 25-year professional career that I've experienced nerves to the point of not being able to physically do what I needed to do technically. All the nerves go away when I get on stage. And again, like I said, I'm very at home. The first time that I performed Swan Lake, these expectations of so many generations of Black women that have been told, you will never be the Swan Queen. You will never be able to fit into Swan Lake. So all of that in the back of my mind. And then all of a sudden at 32 years old, which is ancient in ballet years, to be given the first time I'm given the opportunity to perform the role, my mind was so confused. I've already had this in my head that this isn't even an attainable goal. So in my mind, it was like I'm trying to undo this generational trauma almost of Black dancers before me that were told they can't be a part of this. And so I think that was the first time that I really had to dig deep. I had to have so much support in terms of the mentors around me. I actually started seeing a sports psychologist in order to deal with that performance anxiety that I'd never experienced my whole career. And it was all around that expectation.
And it must be more difficult when there isn't a large community within the company of other Black dancers who are going through exactly the same things you are going through, sharing the same sorts of roles and questions. You've had to subsequently look back and find role models, it seems, dancers like Raven Wilkinson, great dancers, but who again were very much lone pioneers. It's difficult to be just the one, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's extremely difficult. I think coming into my career, again, my ballet teacher was so good, I think, about protecting me in a way and allowing me to just simply focus on the training because I started so late. And so I didn't have a lot of time to have these outside distractions. I started at 13 and the goal was to become a professional by the time I was 17, 18 years old. And I ended up moving to New York and joining ABT at 17. I came into the ballet company not really understanding what it was to be the only. And it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. And I felt so alone and isolated. And I remember I was the only Black woman at ABT for the first 10 years of my career. But there were, a handful of Black men that would come and go. And I learned so much from watching their journeys. I learned a lot of, what to do and what not to do by watching like another Black dancer navigate in a white space. And I think that's just kind of like my type of personality where I sit back and I observe. I'm not someone that kind of walks into the room and is like, I have so much to say. I'm the center of attention. But I really kind of observe what, people around me. And I've learned a lot by doing so. But later on in my career, I started to seek out other Black dancers, Raven, as you said, being one of them. I saw a documentary on her in the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo and was just stunned to see that there was another Black dancer of her caliber. I didn't know anything about her. I didn't learn about her as a young person. I didn't learn about a lot of Black dancers. I think Lauren Anderson was like the only Black ballerina I knew about because she was on the cover of Dance Magazine. Otherwise, that history is not really something that's documented and offered to us in a ballet history book. So when I found out that Raven lived in New York, she literally lived a block away from me. It was unbelievable. She became one of my closest friends and mentors, and it was career changing to have someone like her. She shared stories of her experiences, and there was always like a life lesson in that, in the things that she shared. And so it was so vital and important to have someone like her and so many others that have been there for me.
And now, of course, I guess you're fulfilling that role for new generations of dancers. Is that something you've relished, being able to take all that experience and pass it on?
It's not something I ever imagined I would do, but it happened so organically. I feel like it's our duty, I think not just like in ballet or, as women, but as human beings. We live these lives and have experiences so that we can pass on our experiences to the next generation so they can be more than us. And so I feel like I've always had an understanding of that. So it's never even been a thought in my mind that I wouldn't share what I've gone through with the next person. So it's amazing to be able to have other Black dancers around me, but beyond that, just dancers, period, that I can look out for, or, even if I'm not one-on-one having these relationships with a lot of people, the work that I'm trying to do within the ballet community to make it a more inviting, inclusive space. I'll be doing that work for as long as I'm here.
And is there anything when you're speaking to young dancers that surprises you about what's in their mind? I'm thinking about a lot of reported anxiety in the last few years, especially since the pandemic, perhaps because people are just much more open about talking about emotional health and mental health. Does it surprise you? Does it upset you that there are young people whose heads are absolutely buzzing with worry and concern?
What I try and share with them is that we have such an incredible opportunity by being a part of this community to use our art form as a healing source for these anxieties that they may have. And I think that's why the arts are so important. And dance education, arts education, I think that it's such a natural way of healing those things that we're experiencing from the outside world, and to really take advantage of that. Like, these are hours and moments where you can be away from your phone, away from what's happening in, politically or in the outside world, and just to completely escape and be one with your body and with the music and with a community of people around you that are, passionate about the same thing, to really be present and focus on those things.
Let's talk a bit about joy again, because, we deserve it. We deserve a bit of pleasure. Tell me, what was the joy of dancing when you were a child? And has that stayed the same? Is it still the same pleasure?
I would say that the joys of dancing as a child really stemmed from the music I was hearing around the house. And it was a lot of pop, hip hop, R&B, and soul music. And so I would say that, I'll do photo shoots or whatever it is. And I always want to put on that type of music because I feel like I'm so creative in that space. But music in general, I think, is what really drives me as a dancer. It's so important that I know the music inside and out, whatever it is I'm dancing to, because that to me is what's sparking the creativity for movement to come from. As a young person, I remember choreographing my own dances. This was before I did ballet. I was choreographing. I didn't know what it was called, but I was choreographing dances to Mariah Carey music and George Michael. I remember the first time I auditioned for the dance team at my middle school, and I was 12 and a half, and I'd had no dance experience at all. And for some reason, I had the confidence to say, I'm auditioning for the captain position to lead the dance team. And I auditioned to George Michael's I Want Your Sex. And looking back, I'm like, how did anyone allow me to do that at 12 years old? But I was made captain.
There's a life lesson in there somewhere. I'm not sure what it is.
I don't know what it is either. But there was just something about, music that was exciting, and that it motivated me and was joyful to me. And I think that's when I really blossomed.
And where are you happiest as a dancer? Is it, you've talked about being on stage. Is it that rather than in the studio or in class?
It's both. It's both. It's really both. Yeah, I love being in the studio. Maybe dancers say they enjoy the stage more, but there's no way you don't enjoy the studio because so much of our time is spent there. It's a small percentage of time that's spent on the stage. The real journey is what we do day in and day out. We're in ballet class every single day. And to me, there's something so comforting about that. The ritual, it's like meditation, to go into something knowing exactly what the routine is going to be, the structure of it is going to be. And again, I think that based on just my childhood and growing up, that's something I've always held on to. And I think it's so good for children as well, to have something in their lives where they know what to expect. It becomes, again, like a ritual where they can kind of relax into it and be calm. So yeah, I enjoy being in the studio. I think it's also like it's a beautiful social setting when you're in a company as well. That's really fun.
Have you always found community in the companies you've worked at? Which I say companies, it is really ABT. It's been the thread running through your career. Has that always been a sustaining community for you?
Yes. It's something that's important to me, even when guesting with other companies, whether or not it's an environment that I would want to come back to. I think that community and environment is so important to how you perform and how a production comes together. And something that I really have always valued and been appreciative of is the environment at American Ballet Theatre. Like, this is family. I've been in the company for so many years, and I travel the world with these dancers, and we spend more time with each other than our own families. And so I think that it only makes for an even more exciting and magical experience on the stage when you see that there's real relationships that are formed. You can really tell by the way a production comes together. And that's always been really important to me. Whether I'm traveling, I want to connect with the people around me. I want to be able to look at the dancer, whatever role they are portraying, look at them while I'm on stage and connect with them. That's equally as important as connecting with an audience.
And this podcast will be going out in June, which I think will be 9 years to the month in which you were appointed the first African-American principal at ABT. You were saying that you weren't expecting that to happen. Was it something you wanted to happen, or did you just think it wasn't on the cards at all?
I would say most young dancers, when they start dancing, their dream is to be the ballerina or the lead. So as a young person, yes, that was my goal. I wanted to dance Kitri and, Aurora and these roles. The more time I spent in the company as a professional, the farther away it seemed. But I've never been that type of person to just give up because my journey didn't look like someone else's. I knew that starting at 13 was extremely late. And so I think having that type of beginning, I never allowed other people's journeys or expectations to get in the way of my dreams. So it may not have been something I was saying out loud, like, I've got to be a principal dancer, 15 years in, which seems so unrealistic. I mean, if you know the structure of a company and coming into a company, the artistic staff or director, they'll have their eye on the people that they really see possibility in moving through the ranks. And it doesn't, I was in the corps de ballet for 7 years before I was promoted to soloist. And I was a soloist for 7 to 8 years before I was promoted to principal. That's a very long journey. In my 5th or 6th year as a soloist, I was just so excited to be doing the roles that I was getting the opportunity to do. So the thought of principal dancer, like the title would have been really important for history and for the Black community. But I never imagined I would be doing, Juliet, and I was doing Odette Odile, while I was still a soloist, and all of these principal roles. When I was promoted, it was a bit shocking because I was like, I'm living out my dream doing these roles. So it was just icing on the cake.
And were you prepared for the excitement in the world far beyond ballet that announcement caused? The amount of attention, I don't suppose you could have been prepared for that, could you?
No. It was so bizarre to me. I had no idea. I mean, I don't think that anyone like really understood what was going to happen. You could feel like it kind of palpitating. It was in the audiences that season I was promoted. And it was really difficult too, because I had performed Swan Lake for the first time. I think it was earlier in the year in Australia, but I hadn't performed it in America at the Metropolitan Opera House, at Lincoln Center, our home. And so I remember leading up to a lot of my first time principal roles. You know, the New York Times was coming to review it, which doesn't happen for a first timer typically. You know, you'll get a matinee show, you're kind of testing the waters and no one's coming to review you. You get a couple of reps under your, even years before that's happening. And it was happening in my first performances. And I remember all of these articles being written. Will Misty be promoted? Will she be promoted if she doesn't execute her 32 fouettes? Is this only going to happen because she's Black? Like all this expectation. And it was just overwhelming. So, you know, there was that buzz going on, but I was promoted. I think it was like early in the afternoon. And then I was due to go right into rehearsals and I was performing that night. And there was like a flood of publicity and people calling from everywhere. And so it wasn't in the cards, but I ended up on like my hour break. They set up a whole press conference in a room in the theater and everyone just came in at once. And that was kind of how everyone got sound bites and stuff for what ended up going globally. It was just not what I expected at all. And there's no cell service at the Met, like downstairs where we rehearse. So I couldn't call anyone. Like everyone was like, my phone was exploding and they're like, what is going on? I'm like, I'm rehearsing. Leave me alone. Got work to do.
It does feel, again, when you were talking about your childhood and the turbulence of that, how ballet helped you shut out the noise from the wider world. I guess that's something that's carried on throughout your career. And maybe it's a helpful thing that there's this other very, very demanding thing that requires 100% of your concentration, that means that you can't focus on whatever chaos is swirling around you.
That is so dead on. And because of my experience, and not that this is going to be everyone's experience, but I think that it's a really helpful tool. This is really why I wanted to start, this program through my foundation, because I know that there are so many children that have similar experiences that I did as a young person, or in atmospheres where they're not being nurtured in any way. There's no focus on them. There's so much going on in their outside lives, or even in school. And so to have this one place where you can let go and be free and be creative and find joy and have a support system and have someone who cares, that to me is like at the real core of why I wanted to start this program and what ballet has brought to me. I mean, of course, I've had a lot of obstacles along the way and it's been really challenging, but always, again, internally, it's what I think has saved me in so many ways. It's what's given me the career that I've had beyond the stage. And I'm just so thankful for it.
And what are the transferable skills from dance when you're meeting with a board of directors, when you're pitching to a foundation for support, all of those things? Because when you're a dancer, you're not necessarily expected to speak or to speak up.
Right.
And so finding that voice and finding that confidence is a challenge in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, it takes having the right support system to help pull out those unique skills and to be able to transfer them, but they're in there. I think that dancers are amazing communicators. The way that we communicate through our bodies. I mean, we were talking about it before, but like you have to tell a story and communicate to an audience with no words. That's a real skill. But I think that it's just trying to learn how you bring that to your voice. The communication skills, I think that the discipline, the passion, the sacrifice, the grace, the patience, the strength, the perseverance. I've stepped into so many different worlds at this point in my life, whether it's in, film and TV, media, or literary worlds or athletics worlds, all of these things. And almost in all of those spaces, people say the best people to hire are dancers.
Because of the dedication and
all of those things. Yeah. I think we're so used to being in environments where we're being molded, and we have to be quick to learn and adjust and adapt in different roles with different types of people. And that goes a long way in so many spaces.
Of course, you're also a parent now. I'm wondering, does that make you think differently about dance, about what it can give, but also how much it demands? How best to introduce that to a child and hold on to the joy?
I've always known that if and when I had a child, that I would want to introduce them to dance. Not force it upon them, but to have them be exposed to it, which differs from a lot of my colleagues and, peers. I have a lot of friends that haven't had positive experiences in this world and wouldn't want to have their children a part of it. And I just feel like it's possible to find an environment that's safe and that's nurturing and that can be inclusive. And so I think it's really the parents' responsibility to find the right studio and teachers to put them in an environment where they will succeed. I have a son who's 2 years old. Ballet was not something that I was introducing him to. I'm in my closet right now, and I have, in my whole house, I have no pictures of myself doing ballet or any ballet. I have one photo right here of Maya Plesetskaya. It was a gift from a friend of mine, and she's bowing. And since Jackson was, a couple of months old, he was so drawn to it, and he would point to it and go, For 12 months, he did this. And so finally, I was like, okay, I'll show him a little bit of Swan Lake. I showed him a video of Gillian Murphy and, ABT's Swan Lake on YouTube. And he was just shocked. And he would sit there and watch the entire full-length ballet. This was at a year old. And I would get so excited because he'd want to watch different ballets. And then we moved to the TV. First it was on the computer here in my dressing room in my closet. And then I started doing it on the TV, different ballets. And I would get up and I would be so excited and I would be dancing. And he would be like, Mama, like move, Mama. Like, let the professionals do it. Like no concept that I dance or, anything like that, which is so funny. He's naturally drawn to it. So we'll see where it goes. But I think it's a beautiful thing for a child to experience because I think it will impact them no matter what they do with it.
Also, there's a ballet dynasty in the making. I sense this now. Generations of Copelands. I think this is a good thing. You took maternity leave from ABT. Is there a planned return? Because obviously there are many audience members who will be slavering with excitement.
I think this has been one of the longest maternity leaves in ballet history. But
it's not one of those, I took a month and now I'm back.
No. It was interesting timing for me. I actually had a back injury maybe a month or two before the pandemic hit. It also kind of coincided with these feelings I had, where I was starting to kind of lose the same kind of spark that I've had my entire career. And so when the pandemic hit, I was like, oh, well, this is good timing for me personally. It kind of gave me a moment to step back and figure out how I was feeling and sift through those feelings and also focus on things that were, to me, equally as important as my performance career. Diving into my production company a little bit more and really molding and creating the foundation. And, I wrote a couple of books in that time as well. And then I knew I wanted to have a child. And so then I had Jackson during that time as well. So it was a combination of, it had been, I think, two years. And then the company was back up and running, post pandemic. And I just felt like, I don't know that I'm ready to be back on stage. And, also my physical body, I had a severe injury years ago now, but I had a plate screwed into my tibia. It was the most severe injury of my career. And it still to this day bothers me. I had one of the screws removed during the pandemic, hoping that it would relieve some of the pain and the pressure, and it didn't. So I'm kind of up against all of these things where I've got all these other things that I think are so important for me to do in this time. Of course, growing my family, which I would love to do. But I know that who I am at my core, like we started this interview with, is a dancer and a performer. So I know I will be back on the stage. I know that I will have a farewell in some way to my career with ABT, which has been just beautiful in my experience. And then I know that I will go on to dance on other stages. I know it won't be classical ballet because I don't think my body can handle that. I'm 41 years old. And so yes, that's a long answer and way of getting to yes.
Misty, we have just really skimmed the surface of all you've done, but I'm wondering, would young Misty have been surprised to read adult Misty's CV and go, what? Or would she have seen it coming?
Oh my gosh, no way. Absolutely not. I saw dance as a way out, a way to grow, a way to experience different things, a way to have more happiness in my life. But I didn't think that it would ever reach these heights. You know, I give so much credit to my first ballet teacher, Cynthia Bradley. I remember months after I had started dancing with her, and she said to me, Misty, one day you're going to dine with kings and queens and dance all over the world in the most important stages. And I remember looking at her like, she is off her rocker. But she had a vision and she saw potential. And I think that it's so important that, you know, children are given an opportunity and then it's up to them what they do with it. And I think that I've always, again, been so grateful for the opportunity to be exposed to dance. And I've done as much as I can with the opportunity.
Misty, it has been a joy, but there is only one more question to go, and it's this one. Why does dance matter to you?
Dance matters to me because it has been essential in shaping who I am as a person and who I will continue to be.
You shouldn't meet your heroes, they say, unless, that is, they're Misty Copeland. What a generous-spirited, richly thoughtful guest. And what very fortunate young people who get to meet her or take part in the work she's set up. You'll find details of Misty's foundation in our show notes, as well as details of the Royal Academy of Dance and its social media. Please do subscribe and like the podcast so that you don't miss a single conversation to get you through those days of chores. Our guest today was Misty Copeland. Why Dance Matters is made by the RAD team of Keisha Dodd and Katie Hagan, and our artwork is by Bex Glendinning. Shout out to Amina and to our ever-inspiring producer, Sarah Miles. I'm David Jays. Take care and see you soon.